Thank you so much for coming. Angela Lennon, president of the Omaha Bar Association, is here today. And we were talking at the annual meeting down in La Vista about some programming that could help attorneys in living their lives. And some of that is how you work, and some of that is how you are outside of work. Working smarter, not harder, time management, obviously. And Autumn is a great speaker on this. And we usually lean on Susan Koenig for things like this. For those who have been at these in the past, we like to have her here. And we decided to diversify out to another attorney coach here in town. So I will turn over to Autumn, and she has a wonderful book. If anybody's interested, I'm sure she'll show you where to get the book. I really enjoyed it. So thank you for being here today. I think the idea is maybe we're going to have some more events in a similar fashion down the way. So keep your eyes peeled for that.
Nice. Thanks, Dave. Can you guys hear me okay? I'm a little short. And I'm sure some of you probably can't see my mouth because I am really short. So I'm going to move around. Oh, there you go. Better? Anybody? Okay. All right. Today we were talking time management. As Dave mentioned, Susan Koenig is a coach in town. She's my coach. She's amazing. She's the reason that I do this work and how I got into this work. So if you've heard her speak before, you might see some similarities in kind of how we show up. But I am a coach for lawyers. That is all I coach are attorneys, primarily women lawyers, but I do coach men as well. So today we're talking about time management and what better time of year to do it. For those of you that are unfortunate enough to know me on a first name basis, I'm going to call you out back. What would you do if you had an extra hour in every day?
Oh, wow. Probably spend more time with my family.
I love that. Okay. Angela?
Spend more time with my kids.
Okay. Dave, you want to jump in on this?
Work out more.
Ooh, okay. Good one. Anybody else have something that comes to mind that you wish you had more time for? Anything? This is the icebreaker. Sleep. Okay. Obviously, a really big one for lawyers. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of an embarrassing story about myself and not properly planning and using time to make important decisions about not only my life, but this is my legal name. So for those of you that maybe have known me over the years, you've seen a few iterations of this, but this overly punctuated first, middle, and last name is currently my legal name. Why would anybody on the face of the planet want something so complicated? Because when you book a flight, they don't often accept punctuation. So out of the gate, my IDs do not match my reservations. Credit cards, same thing. Creates lots and lots of problems. Why would I do this to myself? Have any of you been to the Clark County Courthouse on a Friday or Saturday night? Is anyone familiar with the Clark County Courthouse?
Right.
That is the courthouse in Las Vegas. And so if you've ever been there on a Friday or Saturday night, it is a very weird place. There are a lot of weird things going on. There are a lot of weird people in line. But like everything in Vegas, it's streamlined for marriages. They are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all year round. So like any woman in her 40s who's ready to get married, I go to Vegas. And I go to the Clark County Courthouse with my partner. And we go up to these kiosks because like everything in Vegas, it's streamlined and really quick and dirty just to get the job done and get you in and get you out. So we go into the courthouse on a Friday night. It's like 10 o'clock at night. And I go up to this kiosk and didn't realize that the courthouse had streamlined the process. So when you're selecting your name, they give you like 3 options. And one of the options is they take your middle name and your last name and they hyphenate it and make it your new middle name, which is fine if you don't already have an apostrophe in your new legal name. But of course, I'm standing there and there's all this weirdness going on. I'm starting to feel that panic of like, oh my God, I just want to get out of here, right? Like that feeling that we get when we're overwhelmed, that we just want to get something done and we're feeling that pressure. So of course, I just make a decision from the drop-down menu, and this is what I have to deal with every time I travel, every time I get a new license, every time I book something. And this is to say that when we are crunched for time and we're trying to make a quick decision, sometimes they're not fully baked. But when you go to Vegas to get married by this guy, you kind of sign up for these things. But I share this with you because this happens in all aspects of lives and our practices where we're feeling that crunch and we have to make a decision. And sometimes we don't realize that these are decisions that we're going to have to stick with for quite some time. I will answer to any of those names due to my coaching business. I'm known as Autumn Noble. I have a book. I have a podcast. I can tell you more about that if you're interested. But today we are talking about time management. And this is something that I coach on all of the time. And I will tell you the things I'm going to teach you today, you're not going to like it. You're going to resist it. You're going to think that I'm crazy. You're going to look at me like this is never going to work for my practice. I see it all of the time. And I promise you the things I'm going to teach you today can absolutely be life-changing. They're not easy to implement. They will likely require change in how you show up every day. But these are some of the most important tools that I work with all of the time. So let's go ahead with the zoom out. Why do we care about having more time? This is why I started with that question. It's never about being more productive at work. It's always about spending more time with family, exercising, getting more sleep, caring for myself. So this is not just a discussion of how am I more productive at work? How do I bill more? How do I generate more revenue? It's really about how do I align my life and my time with who I actually want to be. So before we even dig into how do I find more time and get more done and not have to do CLEs in December, I want us to think about why do we care? What is it that you're not getting enough of in your life? What's not working? What do you want more of? What do you want less of? Do you have personal goals? A lot of the women that I work with, a lot of lawyers that I work with, when I ask them, what are your goals? They kind of look at me like, I haven't really thought about that in a really long time. And that's not a judgment. It's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just an awareness. Do you have goals? Does that matter to you? Do you have a personal life? Do you want a personal life? What are your professional goals? Are you doing the type of work that you want? Are you working with the types of clients that you like and enjoy, including your coworkers? As we work through all of the tools I'm going to teach you today, I want you to really keep this in the background of your mind. As you think about this, your brain is going to tell you, this is silly, this is crazy, I don't have time for this stuff. I don't want you to think about the how. I just want you to think about the things you're wanting more of in your life, and then we will get to the how. So here are some examples that I often get from lawyers. This is a sample kind of ideal life and things that people want more of in their life that they don't have enough of. Eating regular healthy meals, maybe not at my desk, maybe actually taking a lunch break. Sleeping 8 hours a night. Some people want to meditate or do more inner work, more kind of touching in with themselves more regularly. Having time in the evening with their kids, having a date night with their spouse. Maybe they want to go to a CLE every quarter or 2 CLEs every quarter so that they don't have to be here listening to this strange lady in December, right? When we're trying to get out of town for the holidays. I heard you. So this is something that at the end of our discussion today, I want you to leave with this idea of, okay, these are some things that I would like in my ideal life. And I want you to leave and make a list of what your ideal life looks like, because that's going to come into play later when we start engaging these tools. As you start thinking about this ideal life, right, going to the gym more, sleeping more time with friends, family, kids, your brain is going to tell you, I don't have enough time for that. It's never going to work. This is not possible for me. And one of the things that I will tell you is that that is a load of garbage. Most of us take this position that, well, I just don't have enough time, as if it were outside of our control, as if we weren't making active decisions about where we're really spending our lives. And so one of the things I want to empower you with is this idea that we make choices every second of every day of how we spend our time. And this idea that being really busy is a badge of honor or a badge of importance is complete garbage. And you think about your culture at work, And people always say, well, how are you doing? Are you busy? Oh my gosh, I'm so busy, right? That's what everybody says. And if you don't say that, it's a negative. And I want you to really consider that what if that, oh my gosh, I'm so busy, I have so much work to do. It wasn't something to be admired, but was rather a red flag. This person is not managing their time, they're not managing their schedule, they're not managing their calendar or their projects properly. And that is why, oh my gosh, I'm just so busy. I want to take that a little bit further as well and encourage you to prove to yourself how busy you really are. Do you know where your time goes? I know many of us bill by the minute, and I hear you, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm really curious if you know how much time you spend on your phone, on social media, talking with friends, driving your kids around, sleeping, cooking, cleaning. If we say we're too busy, I think we have to prove it to ourselves. What are we busy doing? Where does our time go? So this is an experiment that I encourage most of the people that I work with to conduct at least once as sort of a self-assessment of where is your time going and how are you spending your life. I would do it for at least a month and really track that time and try not to censor it because your brain's going to judge you. Oh, that was a one-off or that was unusual or that took longer than normal. No, we just want a really honest assessment of where your time is actually going. And if you are too busy to have the life that you want, prove it to yourself at least. My coach, Susan Koenig, always says to me, look, see, tell the truth, and take authentic action. This is you challenging yourself to look and see and tell yourself the truth about the decisions that you're making, about how you're spending your life. And if you want to say you're too busy and I'm just so busy, at least you will know exactly what you're busy doing, okay? This is a breakdown of the time over an average life. Oftentimes we lose sight of how much we have available to us and really thinking that all of this time, it's within our power to spend it however we want to. And it's never spent without our say-so. Our days don't just get away from us. We choose to answer the chaos and the drama that shows up at our doorstep, okay? So again, I want you to think really big picture, right? If I have the power and control to spend my life how I want to spend it, what would I choose and how can I start living closer to that? I want to pause before we get into the how and talk about why this is so stinking hard for lawyers and for humans, okay? There was a sociologist back in the 60s named Stephen Cartman, and he developed what he called the drama triangle. And it talks about how people interact with each other in a social environment, particularly in an environment where there's drama and conflict and power imbalances. And I see this all of the time in our world as lawyers, right? We feel like the partner, the boss, the client, the clock, they're the villain. And we have no power but to say yes to what they want when they want it. That's the villain-victim dynamic. When it comes to time management, what that means is we feel like we can't say no. If the client wants it at this time, we have to give it to them. They're the villain, we're the victim, completely powerless. And it's just good to know that that dynamic is part of the reason that we struggle with time management. We believe we can't say no, and we feel powerless. And that creates this cycle and this pattern of not honoring our time the way that we want to. The other dynamic, at play is the rescuer. And I see this the most with young associates, or like mid-level associates. You know, we're lawyers. We're in the service industry because theoretically, we like to help people and we want to be helpful. But what I'm encouraging you to do today is start making really intentional decisions about how to spend your time. And you may have this grand idea about how you're going to spend your day. And you show up and Susie down the hall is having a complete meltdown, or client calls and they're having a total meltdown. And they want you to fix it and they want you to help them. that hits on that service provider part of us, but it also brings up this rescuer character in the drama triangle. We want to rise up, we want to help them, we want to fix this problem for them. And all of a sudden, our great intentions about how our day was supposed to go are completely out the window. And I see some of you nodding because you know that this is often how our days go. And this is just, not to make you feel bad. I know when Susan told me, I think you're showing up as a victim, it really bothered me. I didn't want to show up in that role, and none of us do. But it's more about the awareness that these are tendencies that we all have that really run counterintuitive to how we want to show up and changing the way we operate day to day. The other issue is our brains and how we are wired. And this is a breakdown of what we call the motivational triad. And that's the part of our brain that helps us survive. That part of us is designed to seek pleasure, avoid pain, and be efficient. When it comes to time management, seeking pleasure drives us to say yes when we really want to say no, because it feels good. It feels good to be the helper. It feels good to step in and be assistants and be a team player. You know what else feels good is ignoring that big hairy project that you know you have to do and answering 100 ridiculous piddly little emails. Those 100 emails feel great. I got 100 people that are happy with me. Meanwhile, this thing sits over here. And that's because there's a part of our brain that's seeking those endorphins. It wants the pleasure from those simple fixes, okay? Good to know. So that brings us to point number 2. We're designed to avoid pain. That's why we ignore those big, nasty projects. It's not fun. There's probably parts of them that we're confused by, intimidated by, areas that maybe a little bit outside of our scope. That's not fun. So we avoid it, and that's why we procrastinate. This also is why it's so hard for us to change the way we show up, right? As lawyers, I think that we are just really good at living in chaos and drama all day long, okay? So we know it. We know what it's like to live in chaos and drink from the fire hose and just go, 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 go all day long. And so the idea of changing it and setting boundaries or saying no or not answering those 100 phone calls and doing the big project instead, that feels weird. And your brain literally is designed to be like, this is a terrible idea. They're going to fire you. You're going to die, right? That biological part steps in and tells us that this is a terrible idea. Also really good to know. And also why some of the things I'm telling you today, you're not going to want to do. And it's perfectly normal. And so just recognizing that that's at play. The last piece is that efficiency. And that again is why I'm really good at living in chaos. Like, this is what I know. I don't want to do something I don't know. I'm really good at saying yes when I mean no. I'm really good at working late nights. This is my world that I'm comfortable with. And when we ask our brain to start changing those patterns, again, that survival part of you kicks in. It's like, this is a terrible idea. And so it becomes really difficult for us to change approaches and embrace new ideas about how to manage our time. Any questions about these? Because what this is really trying to show you is that there is a reason we struggle with time management. Part of it's biology, part of it's just the social dynamics that we live in. But it all sort of forgoes and relegates our power. And what I really want you to take away today is that you have the power to make your day and your life whatever you want it to be. And this idea that things just happen to us, it's not true. And I want you to take that power back and really say, from here on out, my actions will be consistent with my intentions and my priorities, because the second that you do that, your career will change, your life will change, and you will create more time because you live operating from your prefrontal cortex and not that panicked brain, okay? And the tool that I give you is going to structure your life from that prefrontal cortex. Okay, so we've set the stage a little bit as to why it's important to think about time. Speaking of time, let me check where we're at, okay? Now I want to show you a little bit about how I see us operating day to day, and hopefully this will be relatable to some of you. Most of us handle our days with like best intentions, right? Like, I think I'm going to work on this. I think I need to get this done. And we show up and we kind of hope for the best. It's almost like we get on the train in the morning. Like, I really hope this train stops at my kid's soccer game. Like, I really hope this train gets me home at 6. And we just kind of like hope that it's going to work out. But then we show up and we start drinking from the fire hose because chaos shows up. The phone starts ringing. People start showing up at your door. And I call that triaging. We're just like operating like an operating room. ER doctors, right? Like, we're just taking what comes to us and kind of dealing with the low-hanging fruit. And that's going to be the client that you bill like $5,000 a year that calls incessantly with ridiculous questions, right? That's going to distract you. That's where your energy is going to go. You're going to answer that call. And all those other low-hanging fruit type things that just show up in front of you. The problem with that approach is it ignores this Pareto principle. Is anybody familiar with the Pareto principle? No? Okay. It's sometimes called the law of the vital few. What the Pareto principle says is that 80% of our outputs or consequences often come from 20% of our input. So if you think about that in our legal world, swear. Some of you guys, I swear you can't see me because I'm so short. If you think about that in the context of our practices, to me, this means 80% of our headaches come from 20% of our clients. Yes. 80% of our success, revenue, connection can come from 20% of our clients. So when we show up hoping that the train goes where we want it to go and taking everything as it comes, it ignores the possibility that we're focusing on the 80% of the headache. The 20% of the clients cause all the problems. And we're not really thinking like, is this the best use of my time? Is this my ideal client? Is this how I should be spending my day today? We want to think about, how do I maximize that Pareto principle? How do I find that 20% and spend my time there instead of living in this world just drinking from the fire hose? The other problem that you get with triaging day in, day out is that eventually that big hairy project comes due, and we've spent all day dealing with the low-hanging fruit, taking every phone call, talking to anyone that comes to our door. So that big project that very well could be part of your 20% now is going to be done an all-nighter, last minute. It's not getting as much attention as it should. And we set ourselves up for failure, and we compress our time even more. Can anybody relate to any of these practices in your day-to-day? Yeah, I see a lot of nodding. And the thing is, like, sometimes it feels like we're just fixers, right? Like, people call us with their problems, they just want them to be solved. And I get that. But there are other ways to address those challenges than to give them our time and attention and energy in the moment, okay? So, let's get to the tools, shall we? I'm telling you, please reserve the eye rules for the ear. I know some of you are really not going to love this. This leverages a tool that you all have, and it's your calendar. I don't care what kind of a calendar it is. I don't generally recommend a paper calendar because it's difficult to pivot, but it's a calendar of any shape or form, okay? And I call the practice simply calendaring your life. And I'm going to walk you through what this actually looks like. So we want to start with that benchmark, right? We talked at the beginning about what does your ideal life look like? How much do you sleep? How much time do you spend with your kids? Do you eat dinner with your kids every day? I want you to take that a step farther and think about your work life. What do you want your ideal day to look like? Have you thought about what time you want to start working and end working every day? Do you want to take a lunch break, or do you want to work through your lunch break? Do you want to take break for dinner? And asking yourself those questions. What types of clients do you want to work with? Are there people in your firm or your organization that you don't maybe want to work with? But really forcing yourself to ask these questions about what you want your ideal work day to look like as well. And we're going to take those and we're going to create a list. So where I'm going with this is I want you to have one sheet of paper that you check in with as part of this calendaring process. So you have one sheet of paper that doesn't change. Well, we might have to edit it, and we'll come to that later. So we're going to have one sheet of paper with your ideals. What's your ideal work look like? Workday. When you start, when you stop, what types of clients, who do you not work with? Do you want to delegate more to your staff and your associates? Are there types of things you don't want to do anymore? Do you actually want to work like maybe 1,600 hours a year and 72,000? Put all of that on an ideal sheet. That is going to become the lens that we're going to use as we start implementing these tools. So we have your ideal work, and we're going to add to that what we talked about earlier. And that's the life ideals. How much do you sleep? When do you take breaks? Do you have a social life? Do you go to 2 CLEs every quarter? Those types of things. Put that all on one list of ideals, very high level. I don't know if I love this. Back over here. Okay. So then we have that list. The next thing we were going to do is not do the ostrich approach, okay? We have so many things going on in our lives. It's like we're not paying attention, right? It's like we get on that train, or like, I don't really want to know what's on my plate right now. I don't really want to think about all the things I have to do today, or this week, or this month. We're going to look at it, right? Going back to the beginning and what Susan taught me. We look, you see, you tell the truth. So this is writing down every single thing that's stressing you out, that's on your to-do list. If it requires your time, it goes on this other list. We have the ideal list, and now we have this ugly list, but it will get better. So we write down everything you have to do personally, professionally. Do you have to send flowers to your mom? Do you have to get Christmas presents? Get a dress for a wedding? Get a wedding gift for your friend? Get an oil change? Do you have certain projects that you need to work on, certain follow-ups that you need to do? You write it all down. We call this just a brain dump. Everything that goes on there, try and break it down as much as you can. If you have to follow up with the client, talk to associates or staff about delegating, all those things go on this list. Preparing for phone calls, researching time, any minute task, call again, oil change, right? Make a dentist appointment, all those little things that I call them energy gnats, right? Like you're trying to focus on one thing. You're like, oh my God, I got to get a card for my mom's birthday. She's going to be so mad at me. It's going to be late, right? Energy's gone. Focus is gone. All of those energy gnats go on this list. If delegation is something you want to do more of, and I'm guessing for most of you, that's probably the case, this is something that needs to be strategized and broken down on this list. The biggest problem I see with people when they want to delegate is that they say, okay, this is due in 2 weeks, get it to me in 2 weeks minus 1 day. They don't anticipate that first draft is going to be absolutely miserable. And they're going to have to follow up, have more discussions with them, send them away to work on it again, review it, edit it, get it to the client, right? Delegation requires more steps, but theoretically less time for you if you plan it out properly. And so all those steps to delegating, the follow-up, the re-editing, the reviewing for round 2, getting it out the door, goes on this list. The calendaring process I'm talking about, we're going to do once a week. But during the week, after you've done it, little things are going to come up. So you just keep a new running list and keep adding to it for the next week, okay? And don't forget your life ideals. If there's anything on that ideal sheet that requires time, it also goes on the ugly list. So gym time, meal prep, grocery shopping, cleaning, anything like that that requires your time, it goes on this list. So it starts to get a little bit ugly. And here's an example of personal to-dos that could go on that list. If you want to eat healthier and not order in all the time, maybe you need a meal plan and order groceries. Get a cake for your mom's birthday, schedule an oil change. All these little things that are part of our life goes on the list. And then you add your work stuff. Maybe you have to edit a stock purchase agreement. You have to do a memo. Maybe you want to delegate that memo and meet with someone to do that. All your big projects, all the small steps, attending a CLE, of course. All of those things go on the ugly list. So it keeps getting longer. That's where we start. And then we start massaging the list. The first thing we're going to do with the ugly list is assign a deadline to every single thing on the list. And this may mean that you need more facts. It's not uncommon for clients or partners or bosses to give you a project without a deadline. Not helpful, right? We want to engage in meaningful communication and follow up so that everybody's on the same page about when things are done. So you may need to get more facts. You may need to consider offering your own deadline. Saw your email. I'll get back to you in 2 weeks. Let me know if that doesn't work. And get clear on when you actually have to attend to all of these things. And notice your thinking, because I promise you, when you sit down to do this, especially the first time, when you realize how many things are on your list, your brain's going to be like, but I have to do this now, but I need to do this now, but I should do this now. That is not factual, okay? That is your guilt and that is your shame, right? I always say that lawyers, our favorite emotions are shame and guilt, and it drives a lot of the things that we do. And usually it's because we're running out of time and we feel like we put things off for too long. I just really need to do it now, and I feel bad I haven't gotten to it. That has no place here, right? We're only doing factual deadlines. So notice when your brain tries to tell you these things will have to get done. We just want to be clear on the facts. Now, everything on this list, we're going to prioritize it and ask yourself, what's the worst case scenario if it doesn't get done? I had a client once who was a lovely woman. She called me incessantly with little questions, just constantly little emails. And she would always give me a deadline. And that's the type of thing on the list that I would look at and say, what's the worst case scenario if I don't get back to her when she's asked? Probably nothing, right? Really forcing yourself to answer that question. Because again, as lawyers fueled by guilt and shame, we feel really bad when we don't show up the way someone else wants us to show up. But when we're overloaded and overwhelmed and trying to get clear about our time, we need to really understand, okay, what really needs to be prioritized and what doesn't. Like, is this a sunshine and margaritas dream, or is this like a real deadline? And update your list taking that into account. Are the things on your list your greatest contribution? I had a partner, litigator, I was meeting with the other day, coaching with the other day. And she said, well, I've really got to edit all the footnotes in this brief. And I'm looking at her like, why are you doing that? Well, I waited too long and I just feel really bad asking my staff to do it. And I was like, that is not your greatest contribution. You may feel bad, but that is not a management decision. We have to really ask ourselves, what is my greatest contribution? What's my paralegal's greatest contribution? She may be honored and thrilled to be able to do that for you and help you out at the last minute. And so everything that you're keeping on your list, is it for you or is it for somebody else? Maybe you need to delegate it. Maybe you need to downgrade the priority. And then ask yourself, does it align with my ideals? Because remember, we've got the ugly sheet of to-dos, and we've got the ideals over here. There are going to be things on your ugly list that don't align with the practice that you want. It may be clients you don't want to work with. It might be projects that just don't resonate with you, work that you don't really want to do. So when you find those on your list, you have to ask, can I delegate this? Can I have a conversation with someone to get this off of my list so that my list starts to align with those ideals? The last thing we're going to do is supplement the list. It just keeps getting longer and uglier. These first two steps are likely going to result in more tasks, more follow-ups, more questions, delegation meetings, reassignment meetings, all of those things. And so we just keep adding to the list and running it through the steps. And then we simply calendar it. So this is the part where people start to look at me sideways. So just bear with me. For everything on that list, we're going to guess time. We're lawyers, we're perfectionists, and we seem to think that everything has to be done at A+ level. And so as you're scheduling things and estimating time, asking yourself, does this have to be A+ work or B- work, right? I was associate general counsel at Mutual of Omaha for years. And I tell you what, nothing irritated me more than when I would email outside counsel and say, what do you think about this? And I get a memo. I never wanted a memo. I just wanted like a gut check, like one sentence, okay? I didn't want A+ work. I wanted B- work. There are going to be things on your list that the client doesn't want an A+ answer to. They just want help moving forward. And so as you assign time, ask yourself that question. What kind of product is really needed here? What kind of solution is needed? It won't be a perfect science, and I would encourage you to exercise constraint. Because we're perfectionists, we want everything to be done in 8 hours of time. And oh my gosh, I wish I had a whole day to work on this memo. Like, we're lawyers, none of us have 8 hours of free time, right? Force yourself to constrain your focus and pretend Like this is 2 hours to the deadline, and put 2 hours on your calendar and force yourself to show up under that pressure. And usually you can get it done in much less time if you force yourself to try. Make sure you make room to flex, because our guesses are often a little bit wrong, and that's okay. We can anticipate that, put it back on the list, make more time for it later. And then we take all of this stuff and we put it on a calendar. So I'm going to show you how this works, and please hold the eye rolls because this is all going somewhere realistic, I promise. So the first thing you want to start with are those life ideals. We don't start with the word. We start with, this is the life that I want. This is why I'm in pain for not having enough time. I want to work out more. I want to do laundry during the week and not all weekend, right? So I'm going to schedule some time during the week to do it. Maybe I do want to meal prep and not cook during the week. I need time to do that on the weekends. I have calendar work on here. I schedule an hour and a half every week to do this calendar work. Usually it's only an hour, but I do all of my meal planning and grocery orders for the whole week at that time as well. So it takes an hour and a half. I schedule that every week and it recurs. Do you want to take a lunch break? Do you want to go to the gym? These are all things that can be moved around, added, subtracted, depending upon the week, but you do it intentionally, making the choice what part of your ideal life can go or stay this week. And then you just keep folding stuff in. Maybe you want to have dinner with your kids every night at 6 p.m. We need to know that as we start thinking about your workday. Maybe you want to get a massage every once in a while, go to lunch with friends, or do a networking lunch. Maybe you want to walk your dog twice a week. Can't tell you how hard it is for me to walk my dog twice a week. It's impossible. But I have to schedule it or it doesn't get done. So we put all of the life stuff on there first. You can see where this is going to go. The little bitty things, right? If we're delegating more, you might have 4 projects you want to delegate. We're going to put all those delegation meetings in a 1-hour block. And you're just going to cruise through those 4 meetings and do them all together. Personal miscellaneous things, oil change, flowers for mom, dress for a wedding. At 1 hour on my calendar, I'm going to knock it all out. Because you can think about how much time you lose switching between tasks. We're trying to do all these things separately. Waste of time, waste of energy. We're going to focus your energy and do them in bunches where you can. Cleaning the guest rooms. This is another one that always gets me. When we have company coming, I'm like, oh, sweet, we haven't washed the sheets down there for like a year, But when you do this every week, you can see it coming and have those thoughts like, okay, I'll wash the sheets in the guest room. They're coming in 2 weeks. I'm going to put it on my calendar. It could be 15 minutes, but it's that we don't have to worry about it and it doesn't creep up on you. And this is what happens, right? You start putting your work on here and it becomes very clear why we don't have the lives that we want. Most people avoid this practice because this is where it goes. This doesn't feel good, but I'll tell you right now, this is how most of us are living our lives. We have all of these things that we want to do, that we dream about doing, that we dream about having more time for, and we're not doing it. And it causes us a tremendous amount of pain. That is not helpful. So the first few times you do this exercise, you're going to be confronted with, this is my life. Maybe I don't want to bill or work 60 hours this week. Something's got to give. Maybe some of the ideals go. Maybe some of the work goes. Maybe I'm at the wrong place and they'll never let me more class. I don't know, everyone's answer is different. I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer, but it's about us looking and seeing and telling ourselves the truth about why our lives are the way that they are. Are we choosing to work late instead of having dinner at 6 with our kids? That's a choice. I would say, you don't have to pay your taxes. You don't have to. There's a lot of people in this world that don't. Watch the Real Housewives. None of them pay taxes and they all go to jail for it, right? We pay our taxes because we choose to, because that aligns with who we want to be. You don't have to work late. You don't have to honor those deadlines. You're choosing to. And the question becomes, do you like to reason it? And do you like the trade-off? Again, no judgment, but it's about owning the choices that you're making and recognizing your days just don't get away from you. You're making decisions. And this is to help you decide, maybe I'm being too hard on myself. Maybe this is a season of my life where I'm not going to go to the gym 5 days a week. And I can be okay with that and let it go. and stop being so hard on myself. Maybe the dogs aren't going to get walked. Maybe ever, right? Like, let them out in the backyard. It's about learning to be okay with your reality, but taking back your power for how things are and the choices that you're making. So here's the big picture questions that come from the first couple times that you do this. Is it possible? Do you have 100 hours of billable work on your week, on your plate that have to be done this week? That's not possible. That's something that you want to know on Monday, not Friday when you're knee deep in it. This practice is going to help you get there. You're going to see the obstacles before they come up. Is it realistic? Are the ideals that you have realistic? Is the amount of work that you're working realistic for the life that you want? Do you have availability? The question that we all hate as lawyers when someone says, oh, you have time for this? Now you know. You can actually look at your calendar and say, you know what? Actually, I don't. I've got 40 hours of priority one work to do this week. And you have the context to actually have a real discussion with them about why you don't have time or why you do have time or whatever they're asking you to do. Can I release some of my ideals? Maybe we need to edit an ideal list, right? We're lawyers. We're goal-driven people. There's a million things we probably all want to do with our lives. I like to think of it as it's like a heavy backpack that we carry around. And we use it to judge ourselves and be hard on ourselves about what we're not doing and what we are doing. And I think we really need to be honest with ourselves about maybe this season of my life, I need to let some of that stuff go and edit that list a little bit and start having more compassion for the season of life that you're in. Are you fighting reality? I work with a lot of lawyers that are deal lawyers or litigators, and they say, well, I just want a really predictable practice, and I want to be done every day at 6. And I say, you're fighting reality. Your practice, that is not how it operates. And that's something that you need to address. That means that your ideal and your work are mutually exclusive, and there's a decision to be made. And so asking yourself, am I fighting with the reality of my work or my personal life? And which ones need to go? Sorry, I'm feeling a little scattered about where I want to be here. So to kind of bring it back to where we started, it's about taking our power back and deciding that we can choose differently. It's not me, there's no good choices, there's no bad choices. It's just about doing what resonates with who we are and who we want to be and what actually aligns with our intentions. Okay, so to summarize how this practice actually works, you're going to have that list of ideals. Maybe you need to edit it. You're going to have that list of everything that takes time. And making sure that as the week goes on, you just kind of add to that list. This is not going to probably go smoothly the first 2 times. It's not going to feel good. It's probably actually going to stress you out because it may be the very first time in your life you're looking and seeing and telling yourself the truth about everything on your plate. And that's okay, right? Remember how we talked about how your brain likes efficiency and it tries to avoid pain? What I'm inviting you to do is going to rub up against all of that. And that's okay. But I want you to remember, back to the beginning, what's not working? Why do we care about having more time? That is why we're doing this. Because if we invest in this over time, it will get easier. You will get better at it. But it may require a lot of follow-ups. You may realize that there's a real disconnect between the life that you want and the career that you're living. And that's okay. But the sooner you can figure that out, the closer you're going to be to making your life happier and more fulfilling. And this is going to force you to do that. So what does this get you, right? So we put it all on the calendar. That's fine and good. We got this list. Now I have all these things on my calendar that keep showing up and yelling at me, telling me to do things that I don't really feel like doing. Because that's what happens, right? I always do my calendaring work on a Thursday or Friday for the following week, okay? So when I show up on Monday, my calendar tells me 6:30 in the morning, Autumn, go to gym. And I'm like, I don't want to go to the gym today. But the reason that we do this ahead of time is because it allows us to make those decisions from our prefrontal cortex. That's like the grown-up adult brain. When we make decisions, when we're triaging and we're in the office, we're in the moment, we're probably in that fight or flight survival brain. That's like a toddler driving a car. And so when we put this stuff on our calendar, The toddler brain's going to be like, this doesn't sound like fun at all. I really don't want to do this. And your motivational triad kicks in and no one wants to do this. We can say, you know what? I made this decision for my highest and best self from my prefrontal cortex a week ago. I get to decide if I get to have my own back and honor the commitments that I've made, because that is a skill. It's like a muscle. The more those things come up on your calendar and you do it, you're going to get better and better and better at it. And you're going to learn to commit and follow through with the things that you prioritize. And it just gets easier over time and creates momentum. You do that one thing that seems so daunting and like, oh my gosh, it's Monday and I've already gone past this. This is amazing, right? We keep going. It's also going to force you to avoid avoidance and wasted time. Spend a lot of time thinking, oh, I should go to the gym today. I don't want to go to the gym today. Oh, I don't go to the gym. We spin it. That energy is not helpful. We're not doing anything. We're just wasting time. And so again, we don't have time for that when it's on our calendar. The clock is literally ticking when it pops up and tells us what to do. And it creates motivation. A lot of the women that I work with say, I just wish I was more motivated about my work. I wish I was more excited to do the things on my calendar. And I say motivation is something that we create for ourselves, and we create it by doing and getting started. So that first thing that pops up, if you do it, I promise you, you're going to feel more motivated to keep going, and the days get easier and easier. It's going to focus your efforts because we made these decisions from the prefrontal cortex, right? The toddler brain is not making decisions about what we're doing in the moment. We made it from our highest and best self. And we know that when we put those things on our calendar, we did so intentionally and thoughtfully, considering the Pareto principle, right? It gives you time to think like, okay, on Monday, I'm going to work on that big project that could make or break my practice. And I'm not going to take phone calls from annoying Susie client that comes nonstop. It's probably coming. I'm not going to do it. It allows space for us to focus on that 20% that really matter for our practice. Yes.
Autumn, if I can ask a question, and if you have slides coming up on this, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
We have bosses. I'm glad to see some managing partners in this room today who may have the ability to understand this, but how do we go to our bosses and say, I need help? Because Susan Koenig obviously always talks about asking for help is a power that we have that we don't do. But how do we do this effectively, saying, we need to change this dynamic. I need a support staff first, and I need different time constraints, all these things. I need help with new projects.
Yeah.
If you're coming to that, I'm sorry to.
No, I do. And I'm gonna go back and okay. This often happens in isolation, in secrecy, and privacy. This is our lives. And even if you start doing this practice, when you see that train coming right at you head on, it's like I can either keep it a secret, put my head down and hope for the best, or I can use this as leverage to have a meaningful conversation. Those of us that have managed young attorneys before, it's really frustrating. Like, I'm so overwhelmed, I'm so stressed out. Help me understand. This is helpful, right? An associate comes to you with this is very helpful. Then you can help them understand which one of these pieces need to move. But I think, this is part of the problem with associate development, is that they live in this space in secrecy. And I think we need to do a better job saying, like, look, if you see an obstacle coming, if there's a train coming at you, I want you to come to me and tell me about it, but I want you to be informed and help me understand why you're stressed. And this process can help them paint the picture for you. Because I know myself, when I was a shareholder, it was very frustrating. And it'd be hard to kind of disconnect my frustration from what I was hearing and be really supportive that this is them offering us the truth and the facts. And I think it helps them see it as more of a collaborative opportunity. These are just puzzle pieces that need to be put somewhere. And I think when associates see that this is their life, it allows them to say to the partner, like, hey, can you help me put these pieces together in another way? Because I don't see any way that this works. That's a constructive conversation, as opposed to them feeling kind of powerless and like things are getting out of control. Like, it's clearly a problem that most people could agree upon. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I guess I would just say I see a lot of lateraling going on right now. And I think that shows that people maybe aren't happy, but at the same time, they're finding that there's different situations that work better with them. And I'm glad to see when people are getting into place of they want to be. But it also shows a disconnect maybe from where they've been or what they were told on the way in.
For sure. For sure. The thing I always tell young attorneys, when they get to something like this and they're like, I don't want a life like this, I say, that's really good information for you to have. Now our work becomes, how do we figure out if the place that you are in will allow you to adjust this in a way that works for you? And the sooner you can figure that out, the better for everybody. Not every firm is for everybody, and that is okay. But our work is taking that power back and saying, okay, like, this is nothing on me. It's just, I want to know, can the firm make this work, and can we meet in the middle? If the answer to that is no, fine and good, let's all move on. And the sooner we can do that, the better for everybody. Yeah. So we just have one more slide left. Yeah. So kind of that puzzle analogy, right? That your schedule and your calendar just becomes a puzzle that needs to be put together. Ideally, this practice is going to get rid of all of those energy gnats, right? We put them all down on a piece of paper so we don't have a panic attack about flowers for your mom's birthday when you're trying to edit an agreement or something. And you'll have more productivity because your efforts will be focused. When you're like, oh my gosh, I need to get flowers for mom. Nope, it's already on the calendar. I'm going back to what I'm doing. And it just becomes this like very simple redirect. It gives you clarity on your capacity. When someone says, do you have time for, you know exactly what the answer to that question is. Gives you clarity on your goals. Are you prioritizing your goals? Is this the season in your life for those goals, or do we need to let some of them go? Visual clarity, that helps me. Like, I kind of want to see, like, is my week totally chaotic? That helps me make decisions. And it gives you a plan of attack, kind of going back to Dave's question, the sooner we can anticipate those obstacles and being overloaded, the better we're going to be able to fix it and strategize through it. But if we operate with our heads down, just hoping that the train doesn't pull an all-nighter, it's hard to do that. And this practice will give you the opportunity to anticipate those challenges. So this is where we have been. I want to leave you with a little bit of a quote and really stress that this practice is about taking back your power. It's not being overly rigid and being like, oh, my schedule is so regimented. It's about owning the choices that you made, and in everyday asking yourself, are the choices that I'm making on my calendar consistent with who I want to be and how I want to show up today? And if the answer to that is no, then we get to decide what to do with that. But no more of this, like, I'm just so busy and I don't know why, and I don't have enough time and I'm not sure why. We take our power back and own the choices that we make. That is all I have for you today. So this is information about me. If you're interested in podcasts, I just did one on perfectionism, which folds nicely into this. As Dave mentioned, I have a book. It's available on my website or Amazon. And this is my information. I do a ton of coaching on time management, and I get a lot of skeptics, and I totally get it. But I have a lot of resources. So if you want worksheets that kind of synthesize this down into one easy, usable document, shoot me an email. I'm happy to share that with you. Or if you have any questions or absolutely hated it, trust me, I hear it all, so let me know. But yeah, thanks so much for being here today. I'm open for questions, and we have a little bit of time. We got 10 minutes. Yeah.
Do you have a specific tool that you use to keep that like brain dump list and then do the different categories or planning stages? Or is it like a worksheet that you're saying?
Yeah. So I have a worksheet that goes through like, okay, are you overwhelmed? Let's do a brain dump. And then let's prioritize, allocate time, put on your calendar. Can you delegate? It kind of walks you through that. But during the week, it's not pretty. I mean, I really keep like a sheet of paper and I just scribbled out, oh my gosh, I got to do this one thing. And it just goes like energy net on the sheet, energy net on the sheet. And at the end of the week on Friday, I just pick it up, and sometimes it's Post-its on top of the sheet, kind of reflects how scattered our brains can be. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Anyone willing to try this thinks that it might actually help with your life at all? Dave?
Angela's like, it's been a half year and now you're going to do it then?
We have a question. So for those of us who maybe manage or see a colleague who is constantly overwhelmed and completely stressed out every single day, is there anything that we can do to assist them?
Yeah, I mean, and it's going to sound really self-serving, but this just is what it is. I think when your leaders start engaging in tools like this or coaching, it's a trickle down effect. Like I don't need to coach everybody at the firm, but if a couple people get it and use the tools, then you can lend support to your associates. And so maybe if this is a tool that you pick up and it works, sharing it with them. But I think when I see associates that come to me that are terrible at time management and completely overwhelmed, usually there's someone important in their practice that said, like you need to maybe think about getting a coach or getting some support and letting them know that you see them. Because, like I said earlier, that chaotic schedule, it usually happens in isolation and secret, and they think that they're the only ones. And so I think as leaders, recognizing that you see them struggling is really powerful. And saying, like, I don't know if you've ever met with a coach before, but like I've met with a coach before, I've got support before, I know there are resources out there. I think letting them know that they're seen and it's not abnormal. I mean, that's honestly one of the more powerful exchanges I have with lawyers. I say, everything you're telling me, I hear it all the time. Like, it's not unusual. And then they start crying, usually, because it's the first time someone said that to them. So I don't know if that helps. Other questions? Yeah.
Kind of related to that is how do you deal with as a person, whether it's this plan that only Dave's gonna try. He's up. But as a person who maybe already has a system because I had a coach before, but how do you operate? Like a couple of tips to operate in a world where other people don't have this, right? Because for me, it's very easy for me to wake up and know how my week is going to go. But none of my clients do this. None of my associates do this. And right, you can go down the list.
Yep.
Any just off the cuff couple of things of how you operate in a chaotic world where you're not the chaos.
Yeah, I think, when the steps that we go through here are, we want to help people get clear on timelines and priority level. And that worst case scenario, if it doesn't get done, if you're the sane person in the exchange and they're overwhelmed and stressed out and everything's an emergency, helping them shut off that fight or flight brain and ask questions like, why is this a priority for you? Like, what is the worst thing for you if this doesn't happen right now? And helping them kind of step back and see, okay, maybe this isn't like a real emergency, helping them calm down. But I also think, trying to understand, like, why do you feel like this has to be done right now? And just asking them those questions. With associates and people around us that I find that are overwhelmed, I think having that collaborative discussion where you're actually like walking them through the brain dump. Okay, let's write down everything that's on your list and stressing you out right now. Because sometimes just getting it out and getting it on paper, you just feel so much better. And having someone do that with you and then asking those questions, like, what's a priority? Like, what's the worst that could happen if we don't do this? It helps them shut off that primitive brain because that's where they're at. And it's hard to talk logic. And so your work is to kind of bring them off of the ledge, help them kind of walk through these steps indirectly.
We also more feedback on projects and how they've been completed from clients, from supervisors, and letting them know, you didn't need to go this far, you needed to do all this, or this is great, no doubt you have the ability to do this. That can help people with the anxiety or not understanding how much they can do. They get chatty.
Yeah. And I think on my end of things, it's usually I'm coaching the younger attorneys to seek that feedback. But I think as leaders and practice chairs, it's really on us to provide that. Like, hey, you really gave me an A+++ answer here, but a B- might have been okay. And here's why. Or like your A+++ really kind of missed the mark. If you had met with me earlier, we could have navigated that. And I think just letting them know that you're always available, because when an associate or young attorney runs off with their idea of what they think the perfect answer is, and they're not comfortable coming back to you to check in, it's usually a disaster for everybody. And so for the associates that I coach, I always say, like, get started and then check in if you're not sure and sort of force those conversations. But I think as leaders, we all know that look that you get from the young associates, like it's not clicking and they're freaking out. And I think we need to see that and recognize that and check in a week, but also using our own time management tools to make sure that we give them enough cushion to fail miserably, because they probably will. And that's okay. We all did too, didn't I, Beth?
Oh,
Yeah. We worked together like 15 years ago. But that's, we want to make sure that we build in that cushion, right? And think back to how many times we fell on our face. Those are gifts that people gave us to fall on our face and learn. And when you're working with young associates, give them room to do that, but also recognize that maybe we need to schedule in more follow-ups along the path. And that comes back to our organizational skills. Anybody hate it? Anybody's like, I'm 29. I've heard it.
We'll send the follow-up anonymous. Everyone gets to give the feedback. We'll let you.
Usually the deal lawyers and the litigators really struggle with it, mostly because of the nature of their work, which is fair. So calendaring is a little bit different for them, and I'm happy to chat through that with anybody, but it's really about anticipating obstacles and making room for the chaos that you know is coming. Inhale.
Yeah, Iowa is 1 hour of wellness. So if you're in Iowa, you got that wellness by Lou. Thank you.